Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re Soha.
All right, good evening, everyone. Those of you physically present and those of you online. Good to have you all be here. And we are picking up at the end of this text that we've been saying for a long time. I'm curious when we started this. It's been a while. And it wraps up with that which liberates us from all suffering, which is to recognize the ultimate nature of how we exist. And so, last week we got a little bit deep waters, and it's valuable, I think, to see if we can find some methods in which we can incorporate this always in our lives in ways that are practical, meaningful, make sense to us. And so last week we were talking about the three layers of obscurations as to how we exist. And in Buddhism, just as a foundation, we talk about emptiness, which is not nothingness, but it's emptiness. And that everything, all phenomena that we experience is empty. And so are we. How tough can that be to figure out, right? But one way to approach it is the view of dependent arising. And so we can take a look at, is there anything that exists independently that is inherently what it is, from its own side by itself? And then we go, well, that's pretty hard to find, right? So this cup, right? Now, it had to be made, right? There had to be clay, and there had to be people who make it. There had to be all the materials and whatever they sealed it with. And, all these things came together for what I called it a cup, didn't I? But it's really a mug, right? It's not really a cup. It's a mug, right? And so, we look at it and go, it's a mug or a cup, depending on your perspective. And it looks very independent and separate until we start to realize, well, actually, it's made up of a lot of things. It's not independent, right? It came into being because of all these conditions, including someone who wanted to drink out of a container that we can call a mug or a cup, right? And all the people involved. I mean, you sit there and think about how many people are involved, the materials that were involved, streets had to be transported on, all these things that had to come together for a cup to arise. It arises dependent upon all these causes and conditions and pieces and parts. And eventually we have something that we call a cup. When we go and go, well, it's empty of being a cup, meaning it by its own side is not a cup. We imbue it with the concept of a cup or a mug. I'm going to call it a mug. You guys with me? Let's just go mug. Let's agree. We don't want to fight over this. Just, it's a mug. So, it could easily, go, okay, well, if it was independent, it was a mug by itself, what makes it a mug is the fact that it's round, and then we have square mugs, and you go, has it got a handle? Some have handles, some don't. Now they got those travel mugs. They don't even have handles, man, and then you start getting into, is there any quality here that makes us a mug? And then as you break down anything, what you realize is a mug is a concept in my mind. Right? This is not a mug. It's a appropriate functional label that I apply to it that I can put hot water in and drink. All that to say, it's empty until the label appears of being a mug. 2-year-old kid, not going to see a mug probably. My cat, if I had a cat, wouldn't see a mug, right? Mug's a concept in my mind, so this comes into my senses. I see it functional, raised in a place where we know the difference between a cup and a mug, and I label it a mug. And but others would label it differently. Some people might see it as a pencil holder, if they still make pencils still, right? I'm old. And flower pot. It could be a lot of things. So, but it's not inherently independently a mug. And so what we start to recognize is that we have all kinds of phenomena that hits our senses, our eyes, our feel, all the sense consciousness, hearing, sound, and we get a sense of that, and then we start labeling things, right? Sound. Ah, music. Ah, that's wonderful. Or sound, music. My God, that's not music. Who listens to that? And I have an adverse feeling or I have a good feeling. And then you and I might be listening to the same thing. You have a good feeling, I have an adverse feeling. But it's not good music or bad music. And I'm experiencing it through my conditioning. So I'm filling in, it's kind of, I love the coloring book metaphor, which is, I kind of think of, it's all sort of you guys are all shapes and uh, water sacks, basically. We're a lot of water, right? It's like 75% water sacks. And, and then you're coming in the room and I'm filling in your details. Likable, not likable, interesting, not interesting, like all that. You're bringing something, but I'm filling in and imputing, all these other qualities. I'm coloring my book. But I don't even know I'm coloring it. I just think you're this way or that way. That's a funny person. That one's not so funny. So-and-so's this. And I don't realize I'm coloring. I think what I'm experiencing is how things are. And I don't even know I'm having a subjective experience. So things are empty in the sense of they're empty of what I'm bringing to how I'm experiencing you. That's not inherently you. You're not inherently. I better watch what I say at that point. Let's just take my way out of that one. You're not inherently the way I experience you, and whatever way I experience you, whatever label I put on you, that's not, other people experience you differently. You will experience yourself differently. And how I'm experiencing you is always going to be dependent upon my own conditioning, what you're doing, the environment I grew up in, all these things coming together. And so there's not this objective world out there that I experience. It's just basic cognitive psychology understanding too, how we work. We get senses. We try to make sense out of it. Some people are colorblind. They don't even see color. We're sitting here thinking something's red, but we don't even realize molecules don't have color. So actually it can't be red because there's no molecules aren't red, but we see red, right? And we think this shirt's maroon, except, as you get way down into it, you're not going to find maroon there. And, but that has to do with light reflection and all, all this other stuff and how it works in our perception. And so understanding this nature of emptiness, we can start being more accurate about how I engage in the world and understand I'm having a subjective experience at all times. And even some people are more tender to pain than others, right? Yeah. And so same amount of pain, or something that would cause a certain amount of pain. Some people very sensitive, some people less sensitive. Uh, Emotional experiences, some people get triggered by something, other people don't, same thing. And so there's this constant ongoing interaction of our experience and the phenomena we come in contact with, including mental, thoughts and images that we're experiencing all the time. And we don't generally realize we have a lot to do with all that. Because I'd rather change you so I could be happy. There's a great quote, Leo Tolstoy. Everybody thinks about changing the world. Nobody thinks about changing themselves. Yeah, I get that. If you guys would just buck up, man, get it right. Um, but me changing, it's different. And so as we explore this, and that's where we've been going to now, we start to understand the world I'm experiencing is empty of these things I'm imputing upon them, these labels and concepts, they're not inherently and independently these things, and people are not inherently the way I'm perceiving them. And someone I find annoying, someone else finds interesting. And likewise, someone I find interesting, someone else finds annoying. They're just doing the same thing. And so there's some obvious real value in this, is that if I change how I'm attending to you, I can change my whole experience of you. And so if I focus on the one thing that annoys me about you, man, I can't be in the room with you. But if I attend to like all the life experiences that you've walked through or the good things you've done in your life or, all of that, wow, I can be in the room with you all day. Same person, same experience. How I attend to you is going to have a lot to do with how I experience you. And so then I start realizing, wow, if I start shifting how I attend to what I'm attending to, I get to have a very different experience. And then we look at like resentments, angers, frustrations, and all that. We're going to find these are mental and emotional experiences. And mental and emotional experiences, the causes are within, they're not without. Right? Without are triggers that trigger the experience. But if there's no cause here, if there's no seed here, it won't trigger that experience. The belief system, these imprints, will unpack that in a bit. And so with this understanding then that how I'm experiencing the world subjective, the people, places, things, events, phenomena, they're empty of these things that I just feel so firmly about them. But labels are very helpful and functional. It'd be very difficult for me to get a mug if I didn't have the label of mug. Mug has different labels, different functions too. Told this story a couple of times. I used to, go to souvenir shop. You travel, you go to a souvenir shop, right? And then you get something, New Hampshire, get this little thing. I was there. I got your little souvenir thing. I was sitting there thinking, man, I don't need any more souvenirs. And I've got enough mugs. So what I do is I just go into the souvenir shop, get a mug of that place, and then take a photo with me, and I take mug shots. Huh. Right? Mug shots. And then I'd have my souvenir from Salem, Massachusetts. And then that was a lot cheaper too. But also I didn't have 50 million mugs in the cupboard. And so this mug and that's a mug. Right? So you see how our mind, we have labels, we have things, we have, how we interact. And then we get to ourselves. It's one thing to start to recognize people, places, things subjective, but yeah, we have a real strong sense of who we are. And that's what we started to unpack last week. And that's where we go. Is there anything independent inherently about you, right? And this text is going through these sort of layers, one more philosophical, one a little more experiential, and then the core root sense of I. And at the baseline of all of Buddhism is that all of our mental emotional suffering is because we identify me and mine with that which is not me and mine. I identify me and it's not accurate. And so it's a process of what you're not to start to discover who you are. You know, I'm not my anger. I'm not my insecurity. You know, I'm not this body. You know, this body is not me. You know, so you start unpacking these things. And if you cut off my arm, is that still me over there? I'm here, or maybe that's me all over. Uh, and so the baseline foundation in the way Buddhism looks at this, and even pre-Buddhism, is that we exist. There's what's called five skandhas, or five aggregates. The English word they use aggregates, they come together, skandhas. And essentially, what makes us up as our experience is a form, right? Form, I have form. And then I have feeling. Okay, so the form has feeling. Feelings are generally good, sort of neutral, or unpleasant. You know, when you really get right down to it, at the vibrational, just base level, something feels good, maybe really good bandwidth, or just kind of pleasant, down to neutral, sort of doesn't move you one way or another, maybe bored with that, to pain, discomfort. And so we have all the feelings, right? And then we have perception, where we can perceive and discriminate, the shape of Sam versus Alana, is it? Adina. Adina and Sam, I can discriminate. They're different. So those three things come together. And then uh, the fourth one is called samskaras, which it's sometimes called mental formations, but basically it's our conditioning. It's from a uh, Indian and Buddhist perspective. It's all this conditioning that we have, our habits, tendencies, the things that ripens our karma and kleshas, and that shape how when I experience something, I like it or I don't like it. It's conditioning that we ripen into. And then the fifth is consciousness. So form, feeling, perception, or discrimination, the ability to discriminate between things. And then these karmic formations, samskaras, and then consciousness all together, human form, John. And you'll notice, like when little kids come into the world, little ones, they have different attitudes and thoughts, right? They have different formations, different conditioning, Some have certain tendencies, they like this, they don't like that. Same family, same genetics, twins. Those two twins can have very different interests, very different talents even. And so that would be that basket of samskaras. And then as we engage in our life, those formations become very strong and entrenched, based on how we were raised, we're loved, not loved, traumas we've had, joys we've had, uh, you know, whether we felt loved or not, all that going on, who we've experienced, and culture we were raised in, belief systems, all that becomes reinforced. And then this whole experience starts with a pretty bad premise for personal growth because the mind body system operates on pain to pleasure spectrum. And the mind body knows what gives pleasure. It's going towards that. And it knows what gives pain. It wants to avoid that. And it's operating on its own subconscious level at all times. You smell popcorn, you're hungry. Right? You weren't hungry a minute ago. Knows that, hey, I know what that does, right? So it knows. uh, someone who's treated us badly in the past 20 years ago, we don't even remember, but we see someone who smells or looks like them, this remembers, don't, triggered, So it's always got this training and knowledge of its own, but it's not executive function. Where you and I don't know about you, but I have had some bad habits in my life. And I have said, man, I'm going to change that tomorrow. And mind body said, oh no, not tomorrow. Or it might say, yeah, we'll do that for a day or two. And then like a marble in a groove, man, mind body goes right back. And we start to recognize that we have this consciousness, this capacity to use our mind and have executive function, reasoning, can kind of put things together. Go, this would be a healthy thing to do. And your mind body says, yeah, but cherry pie is pretty good too, next thing you know. And so there's this journey that we're unaware of that, the mind body is kind of driving the car most of our lives. And and it's really hard to uh, work with that if we don't know that we can work with it. We just kind of think, no, I'm kind of an impatient person. That's the way I am. Instead of, oh, I can learn to be patient and I can train the mind body to the rewards of being patient. So it starts to recognize over time, oh, that's a lot better than being this way. But that's a journey and a practice that requires consistency. And so the delayed gratification, which my dear mom tried to teach me for so long, uh, you know, uh, especially the world we're living in now. I mean, really. I mean, we get upset because we have to do two-factor verification. That takes a whole extra 3 seconds out of my life. That is so annoying. And like, wow, delayed gratification effort, things that we do. But what happens is this mind body thing is so easy to run the show and tell you what you like. The habits get reinforced. We don't even think about them. Words come out of our mouth we didn't even think of, just autopilot. And then we actually believe that the person I'm talking to is annoying. I don't realize that the annoying's here, not there. I'm annoyed because I think they should be different. Like, it doesn't even occur to me. I just think, wow, they're really annoying. I mean, get you to agree. Uh, and so you can see where I just keep setting myself in a pattern, reifying people, places, things, and events as though the labels I apply to them is how the world is. And if I can just arrange the world, at some point I'll be happy. Until we discover that doesn't work. Hence, we can have nice homes, nice relationships, lots of resources, and look up the local therapist because I'm having some stress, worry, fear, anxiety, right? It doesn't, you know, I go, wait a minute. All those things that, my mind body was telling me is the reward system, the pattern, they're temporary and permanent. And once we have them, that happiness lasts not too long. Yeah. And then I'm managing whatever else and trying to keep things that I've earned. Stress, worry, and fear. And then stress, worry, and fear that I have the most is over the things that I think will bring me the happiness. What else we stress and worry about other than the things that we think will give us house, home, relationships, car, family, right? So the source of my happiness becomes the source of my suffering, stress, worry, and fear. And uh, and the weird thing is that knowing all this doesn't really help us at all. Yeah. Intellectual knowledge, not because the executive function is one thing. This mind body thing's like, yeah, that was a fascinating talk on Wednesday, wasn't it? Maybe we should go have a talk about that talk. And, man, if I could do the things I know, I would be in a whole different universe, man, But this mind body cannot do the things that I've actually been taught and trained in. Uh, I can do some of the things, that I've practiced over many years, uh, there's so much that, this things, I can't do. I don't get there. Uh, but what I do know is that if I bring it to mind and practice over time and work with what I've been trained in and bring it to the mind and body, so it starts to recognize the reward system, then, oh yeah, of course I'd rather do this than that. And so there's a process, mind training, training the mind, body experience over time, rather than forcing it. Forcing it doesn't work very well. All right, Rebecca, what do you got?
Okay, so my question is what about hypnotism? When you're talking about the mind and body and trying to get it to do what you want it to do, and the Buddhist perspective, I don't know, it's been presenting itself to me through a number of people lately who have either gotten hypnotized for different things or I've met a number of hypnotists lately, and I'm just wondering your viewpoint in regards to that for, maybe breaking a habit you no longer want to have or, something along those lines.
Yeah. So I've never been trained in hypnotism, so really can't answer that with any authority. Uh, what we can relate in terms of Buddhism is that we train our minds, right, in meditation. So that's why we do analytical meditation. And so in meditation, I can bring to mind certain events and activities. We have transforming unskillful events and can experience that in my body and realize, well, that's not how I want to live. And I can put something else in there. And I can start deconstructing the seeds of these negative impulses in my life and actually remove them. So there's a Buddhist process for that. Um, but we also need to, bring it into our daily lives, right? And how we're going to live. So from a Buddhist perspective, um, we have all these training the mind, that mind training, that's what we do. And And so I can't go out and start changing things unless I understand them, unless I recognize. And so in Buddhist practice, we go from hearing a teaching, analyzing a teaching, and meditation on that teaching. So it moves from a thought, a teaching, and understanding to a way of living. So that would be a Buddhist process. But I'm not a hypnotist, so I've never been trained that. Don't know anything about it. Uh, there's lots of things that, skills and methods that can help us in life. And, if you find something that helps you, yeah, nothing wrong with exploring. All right, so we got the baseline, right? And hopefully this is, good foundation for as we venture into ourselves. And and so now we're at this point in the text, and I'm going to bring it back up here. So now the mug's empty, but so are we. The way we identify with ourselves as sort of this independent, separate thing, John, who wakes up every day, and I'm, kind of relate myself to John of yesterday, or so forth. I don't realize I'm changing all the time. I'm a different John. I'm arising moment to moment. I'll have a wide range of thoughts, feelings, impulses, desires, attachments. Some days I can be a very dedicated practitioner. Some days, we're not going to practice. These things will arise, and ups and downs, and things in life. Sometimes I find something funny. Other times, same thing I don't find funny. Right? It's just moment to moment. But yet, I feel like there's this same guy who's experiencing all these things. Right? So that's this fundamental thing that we identify with. And so back in the text, these sort of three ways, from the more coarse to the more subtle. So you sort of work your way through. And the coarsest is the conception of a permanent unitary independent self. And that's what we got into last week. I was hoping that with this foundation, I might approach it again. This is the notion of an unchanging, partless self or soul that does not depend on causes and conditions. It seems to be distinct from our body, and mind continues to exist without changing after we die, right? Not everyone has such a notion. It's most commonly acquired in this life from learning non-Buddhist philosophies and religion, like Christianity, right? Soul, your soul goes to heaven, right? John goes to heaven. Buddhist perspective would say, yeah, your body dies, your consciousness continues, but it's no longer John, at all. And so that kind of sense of some kind of a soul, it's always here, and it's really who you are, and will exist with or without this body, and it's this thing. So that's one that we can kind of explore and start to go, well, can something, how could it exist, and does it not change? Is there anything that doesn't change? And then you go, well, is there anything about you that doesn't change? And that's where we were last week. Everything's changing all the time. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, my cells, my mind, I'm just a stream of becoming moment to moment. And my habits and tendencies can change. My abilities can change. Everything's in a constant flow. And everything about my consciousness and the way I exist now, I see myself as dependent upon these 5 skandhas and all the other conditions and the DNA of my parents and grandparents and all of that as well. So that one, we kind of broke down. And then as you get to the second one, this one's tricky because you need this one in order to let go of this one. Okay. First and foremost, we exist. We have a personality. We have all these things. So we just don't ultimately exist in the way we see ourselves. That's all. So we want to embrace our human form and the way of seeing ourselves and certain personality traits that we have and so forth. So the second one, somewhat less coarse, right? A little more subtle, is the conception of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. This one is innate, carried in our mind from previous lives. So if you believe in that process. So we all have from birth. This type of self or I appears to be somewhat separate from our body and mind and plays the role of owner or controller. So kind of that executive function, that consciousness, different from just the mind body impulses and desires, there's like somebody in charge, so we kind of need that, really do, sense. We can notice it in our thoughts, such as my body is out of shape. I have to start exercising. I got 30 minutes on the bike today, I'm just saying. Yeah. 45 yesterday. So I need to start exercising, or, he hurt my feelings. So that there's someone that is monitoring all this And, so, but that exists, right? That we need that. We need to know. It's just that monitoring is still not separate from the mind-body experience. It's not independent of it. And but man, it serves a crucial role. It serves such a crucial role. And the opportunity to have executive function, the opportunity to have a sense of I'm experiencing anger instead of I am angry. Like that's huge. That is huge. If I'm experiencing anger, I'm aware that anger's arising, coming and going. Is temporary, and I'm not even angry. I'm not angry. My mind-body thing is experiencing all that sensation of anger. And with that recognition, wow, what a difference to engage in the world more accurately, with more capacity for some free will and some choice in your life. So we really need uh, that sense of self that's able to observe, use executive function, experience things, and have wisdom, right? Wise discernment. But DBT, they call that wise mind, but just, that, yeah. This is tempting, but I won't feel good about myself tomorrow if I do that. So we really want that sense of a self that's aware. And, but again, just recognizing it's not independent either, and it's not unchanging. And it's even, relating to an experiences that we're having. And then, so that one is more challenging. And one of the ways that I find helpful is to step a little more deeply into awareness. Okay, so awareness is always there. Awareness is never tired. Awareness is there when you're asleep, when you're awake. Awareness is just, it's always there. I want to be aware of my foot. I turn my attention to where the foot awareness is, and my awareness before I configure it with the sensations, the labels, and then again back to something that's pleasant, and then I elaborate, bird outside, pleasant, wonderful nature. I'm trying to meditate, bird outside, noise, unpleasant, driving me nuts. I can't meditate. But it's the same thing. And then likewise, we can have this same sensation on our front porch in our own house. It's joyful, wondrous, at peace. I get to live here. I don't need to be in Hawaii, where I would then be happy, right? But when you break down the sensation of wholeness and being in Hawaii and looking at the oceans and how wonderful it is, it's not a different sensation than your front porch. All that stuff we elaborate it and then build, and then we impute the qualities, and then, I need a $7.95 latte, not that basic other latte thing here. We start really hierarchy of things and events and qualities, and then, I can't be happy with this because I could have that. And all that's elaborative process. But when you get right down to the sensations, it's really just, again, with the perceptions, the feelings, the gradients, and then how I attend to it. Am I grateful to have a house, or am I desiring another house? Am I attending to it? And so with awareness, just being aware of the sensations, and as they arise, you actually have the capacity to just notice the sensations and not have to take that extra elaborative step. We need some elaboration, right? See someone walking down the street towards you, dark alley, Something in their hand could be a gun. That's a good elaborative process. This might be dangerous, right? So we need that. But man, we go overboard. We see someone dressed in a particular way, and then they're that kind of person, and then that's how those kinds of people are. They got, what is it, like a MAGA hat or another thing. It's like, man, we can just fill in the totality of another human being we've never met. And wouldn't even want to maybe be in a room with them, or the other party, or whatever, and we just fill it in instead of gradually, checking it out. Another human being like me, raised in a different environment, probably wants their kids to be safe, just like I want my kids to be safe, uh, and might be contributing to my quality of life. Might have even, delivered the food that I got to eat today. Who knows? But man, we can fill in a picture in a minute. Bumper sticker. We can make up a whole story about a person driving that car that we never even met. Don't know anything about, might not be their car. One of these days, I really think it'd be a great assignment. Put a bumper sticker on your car that's totally opposite what you believe and just drive around with it. Watch how our ego shows up. And, wow. I had a friend that was part of his assignments. He had to go, there's a psychology thing he was doing. He had to go do things that were really uncomfortable. Like, this is back in the old days, like he'd go to fill up the gas back when they had full serve, and like they would check the oil and wash the windows, and he'd get $1 of gas and insist that they check the oil and wash the window, just do this stuff just to get in touch with his discomfort, get on an elevator and like talk to a person in certain ways about things, like it just and notice our discomfort and how awkward it is and feelings, and then you get a real sense of yourself. There's a real I that shows it. That's very strong, and so yeah, it was a psychology course thing that he was doing. So if somebody talks to you weird in an elevator, maybe they're just in a psychology course. I don't know. Yeah, but we can already see then that all of our how much of our mental and emotional distress is just coming from this strong sense of me in a way I don't exist, and worrying about what somebody thinks about me or what would make me happy or do this. And I'm not even in the driver's seat anymore. I'm just not in the driver's seat. I don't know that a feeling will come and go. I've been embarrassed innumerable times, and somehow I'm still alive and able to talk today. Uh, but in that moment, oh, it's crushing. Oh, it's crushing, right? But what if we, had the capacity to be aware of the sensations and the feelings and know, that's just my insecurity, grabbing onto how I think I need people to see me. Those feelings come and go, and then we engage. And then the key thing is how I'm experiencing the world now is based on all the previous samskaras and events of my life. How I respond to it is creating the future me. And that's where all the power is. From a Buddhist perspective, how I'm experiencing something in a moment when I find it pleasant, unpleasant, whatever, that karma has just ripened. So if it's something terrible that happened, awesome. It's done. We're done with that. What matters now is how do I engage with it? Because now I'm planting a different experience and seeds for my future me. And so difficult, harmful events actually become wonderful. And you go, wow, I got rid of that. And how I engage now is creating my future. And so, that's a very empowered place to be if we can remember it. But when we're in the emotional state, it's very hard to remember, right? We just, mind, body says, stuff comes up. So, so there's, this is a good point to kind of tap into. All of Buddhism, the Noble Eightfold Path. So the Noble Eightfold Path is in the Four Noble Truths. The Noble Eightfold Path is the fourth thing. It's how we free ourselves, right? First one is the nature of suffering and the emotional stuff that we carry to. Number two is the cause, and that would be identifying me and mine with that which is not me and mine, grabbing onto it. And there's people and places exist inherently independently, so gives rise to all that. And out of this misperception, things I like, things I don't like, I build up the elaborations, the conditioning to feel good. The third one is cessation. Well, you can stop doing all that, right? If there's no cause, there's no result. So if I stop reifying things that aren't real, it's not going to be a big deal. Yeah. And the fourth one is how you do it, right? So the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path has three categories. Long rim teachings that we're engaged in here talk about ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So it's very practical. The more ethically I behave, the better I feel about who I am, right? When I do things I don't feel good about, I don't feel good about who I am. A lot of insecurity, a lot of things. I live in alignment with my values. I do ethical things. I feel better about who I am. I have more self-confidence. I take bigger risks. I'm more stable emotionally. That's just clear, straight psychology. Or you can go to, Aristotle, Plato, and all that virtue. We just feel better about who we are when we do things we feel good about. Buddhist, it also creates good karma. So now I'm planting and nurturing seeds and qualities and attitudes in my life that really support well-being, which is also what they're discovering, of course, in psychology. So living a values-based ethical life is always the foundation for all spiritual traditions, all spiritual growth, all sense of well-being. Concentration is I actually need to be present to make those choices. And that's the big issue, right? How many times do we consciously make a choice in a day? I think it's pretty rare. Mind and body's making choices and what we should do, what we feel good, and this and that. We don't sit there and reflect upon whether or not this is adding to the quality of my well-being and whether, having that sense. So it's hard to have our mind even attending to what we're doing, let alone consciously make a choice. So that's where the shamatha meditation gives us mindfulness, gives us the ability to know where our mind is, to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Wisdom is to then understand the nature of how things work. What is cultivating insights and understanding to the real cause of happiness and well-being. I can't know the moment I find myself annoyed by a person that's here, it's not there. They're not annoying. Like it doesn't make sense in my mind that there's annoying people. It doesn't make any sense anymore. There's been a journey, right? But that seed, just I've never observed an annoying person now anymore. I observe myself feeling annoyed and judgmental. Which goes, wow, look at that. Who are you to be annoyed and judgmental? Because man, you can be annoying. So so there's no like that doesn't work right in my schema anymore. But so there's this opportunity as we bring wisdom into our life with the ethics and then the concentration to start making conscious choices that are ethical, that are based in reality, that support who you want to become, how you want to live. That's the journey. And ultimately to realize directly the emptiness of all these things that we've been making real, as though that's how they exist. And then we just stop doing all this stuff to ourselves. So another presentation of that, and this is where I want to kind of land is the opposite of that presentation. The same thing, but in a different, opposite order, which is to maintain the view. So the view is wisdom. I am aware of being a human being, having these experiences, that they are interdependent, arising dependently, and it has a lot to do with how I attend to them. Like I maintain the view, right, of this consciousness, aware of a body, aware of feelings, and that in that view, everything that's happening in my life is offering me an opportunity to understand myself, to understand the world I live in, to grow, to learn, to live a meaningful life. Like everything is giving me an opportunity for freedom. Everything becomes the path of awakening. Everything's showing me my mind, and everything is offering. There's nothing that is happening that doesn't offer an opportunity to improve yourself or the world you live in, right? Merit or wisdom, period. That's either true or it's not. You have to kind of go through that. But if you can maintain that view or bring it to mind at least a few times during the day, but the idea is to hold the view that I have a purpose here. There's a reason I'm here, and I'm contributing to this world I live in. It's giving me life, and I want to make good use of it. And then, so the view is recognizing and identifying more with the awareness of your experience instead of the personality I'm grabbing onto. The view of wisdom. And then meditation. So the view, meditation, and conduct. So then with this view, now with meditation, I start training my mind. I meditate, I develop the ability to be mindful, to be present. And then I incorporate meditations that cultivate compassion, loving kindness, so forth. Maybe it's the things, Rebecca was talking about is, certain habits that aren't healthy and how to change them. So apply those. And then conduct is back to ethics and values. So instead of just one way or the other, just what if we started every day with the view of reality, that you're embarking upon a day that will only come once in your life, and it's filled with nothing but potential to improve yourself, to live in a world in a way that's meaningful to you. And I'm going to do my best to use my mind. I'm going to train in some meditation. I'm going to be more capable of having a choice about what I attend to. So finally, I can know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, whether it's healthy or not, and whether it's based in reality or not. 4 degrees of mindfulness. And then I'm going to recognize conduct. Is my conduct helpful? Is it ethical? Is it meaningful? But as long as you're doing that, you're on a path that will improve the quality of your life, whatever label you stick on yourself. Whether you believe next life, this life, whatever. Basically, it's learning how to live in reality and make choices that are healthy and meaningful, that support the quality of life that you want to live and the self-worth you want to have. And you start creating the conditions, because the real causes are here, not out there. Out there are the conditions that trigger the causes. So we start working with that conditioning, right, the samskaras, and start planting in, I don't know, how about gratitude? If you have gratitude, you're not angry, resentful, jealous, insecure. Contentment, you can water that. Bring that to mind a lot. You might not need hypnotherapy if you're content a lot. And so, just, cultivating contentment throughout the day, or seeing virtue. And then have your conduct match your values. So all that takes, structured practice, but wow, you got to be in control of your own becoming. You're not a prisoner of things. So I'm going to pause there, see if anyone has any thoughts, questions, curious. We went already 7:13. And nobody fell asleep. Kevin.
Yeah, got one time.
Yeah, microphone there. Yep.
Yeah, so John, just thinking about where the teaching started, where it was around emptiness. And as I hear you teach on it, you're challenging some things that feel real and are constructs. But then you also end with a lot of things that are constructs but are real. Like, so is like the idea, and sort of specifically like virtue and sort of like these mentalities we bring to it. So is like the teaching here that everything is empty, or like can you help draw the distinction, like where's there the emptiness and where's there actually not emptiness, but maybe we were raised to think there was something empty there.
Excellent question. And so this is where we talk about two truths. So there's two truths. It's often conventional and ultimate reality. Conventionally, this is an appropriate label. I'll call this a mug. I'm going to have a cup and I'm going to have some hot water. My conventional reality, this is solid, functional. And if I want a cup, I can go get a cup. Ultimately, cup's a construct. That's not a cup, right? There's no cupness in this cup. So we live in this world of what's conventional and ultimate reality. And where the emptiness comes in is that there are certain qualities. So when we're filling it in, right? So it's empty of what we impute upon it, basically. That's all. We're using a cup, but we can use a person or, you know, I don't know why I'm going to lattes tonight. Okay. Maybe I need one. But, some of these desires, we fill in the qualities, of a meal or whatever. Um, and, um, and some of that can be quite helpful and functional in the life that we live. And some can be detrimental, right? Some can be very detrimental. And so having the ability to have a choice about modifying how we're experiencing reality is where the power is. That these things are malleable, right? When you have somebody you don't like and then they tell you their life story and what they walked through and how they'd been tortured and had to overcome this or that, and all of a sudden, man, you love this guy, like I can't. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but I have, where somebody tells me their heartbroken story and I'm like, all right, you're my friend now. Uh, you know, and so things shift. So uh, everything is malleable and changing, but we are experiencing things in this very conventional, functional way. And I kind of like to, I don't, conventional reality is interesting. I like functional reality, kind of makes sense to me, functional. Right now, I can't just sit there and go, I'm going to think happy thoughts and be a happy person. That's not very functional, right? It's not very realistic. But I could work on cultivating a little more gratitude in my life and some conditions, and over time I might find I'm happier, right? That's functional. Irrational, I'm going to think happy thoughts and I'm going to be happy. And I'm going to ignore all the difficulties and violence and pain in the world. And yet there's difficult and violence and pain in the world, right? Or I might actually need compassion and understanding, and I might need to engage with things in a different way. So we're having this very conventional experience of being a human being. And as we start to understand its empty nature, we get to start working with it functionally in a way that's more supportive of understanding oneself and the world you live in more accurately and empowering you to have some free will over how you become. So conventionally, they call it two truths. And so, like, ultimately, we know we're all space. We have atoms and all that stuff, and there's a lot of space in this table, but I cannot put my hand through that table. And yet table is just a construct in my mind. It's an idea. What else could this be? Anybody else got another label? Could be a what? This could be, well, it'd be hard to fill up things with it. Be a good looking mug if we put some signs, yeah. Yeah. So, so therein lies, we don't want to, things do exist and we have enough function. And so emptiness doesn't say things don't exist. They don't exist the way we see them. And we build these barriers. And then we build our own limitations. I'm not this kind of person. You know, it's funny, like I speak for a living now. There's no way you could have got me to talk. Like insecure, paralyzed with fear, had a speech impediment when I was younger. Recovering drug addict with all these, baggage. And, I'd go to meetings 41 years ago and I'm sitting in the corner in the back, man, by the door, hoping to God nobody knows. I sat at a party once for like 2 hours, paralyzed with no conversation and afraid to leave because then somebody would notice me, right? And I had to pee really bad. It was unpleasant. Uh, but that kind of insecurity and lack of ability and, inability to speak and, that's not who I am today, right? I'm fairly comfortable speaking. And so, this process of understanding we're malleable too. Yeah. All right, Dinah, what do you got? Be sure to unmute. Oh, there
Now,
you
can
go.
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, you say things like cultivate contentment. And I go, okay, give me the technique, give me the rules. But then earlier you were talking about observing sensations. So let's say jealousy, you become aware somehow that you're jealous of something. And is there a practice that you can describe where you might uh, observe your sensations or come out more content than when you went in?
Sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But first, the practice of contentment is not necessarily transforming jealousy, but rather throughout your day, appreciating what you have in your life. Throughout your day, noticing the house you get to live in, noticing the yard you get to have, noticing the food that you're eating, the nourishment you have, noticing, the practice of cultivating contentment is appreciating what you have. Subtly different than gratitude. And allowing yourself to be deeply appreciative of what you have. And so that practice is throughout the whole day. Whenever you notice desire or jealousy or something arise, you know, my mind's hooked by that, right? And but I can, if I start actively noticing what I get to appreciate, like where I live, places I get to shop, the food I get to eat, the people I get to my life, then that becomes a more natural state, and it's very difficult then for jealousy and resentment to show up because I'm creating the seeds. It's like planting a garden. I'm planting these seeds of contentment and appreciation.
Okay, but what if they do? What if the jealousy or
Well,
anger?
I'm getting
Boom,
there.
you're getting there? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thanks. Good.
Yeah. So, but I want to drive this point home because the shortcuts are always just short. Okay. But the development of a good garden has roots and take time and is much more sustainable than just transforming an emotional experience that you're having.
Okay.
So, and here's the thing, everybody wants to change a feeling that they don't like. But we don't want to change the ones we do like. So I don't want to change my desire. Yeah. But I'm pretty interested in changing my jealousy. And my desire is going to get me in a lot more trouble than jealousy generally. So, but with contentment, you're not going to have much problem with desire or jealousy. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So cultivating this over time, is meaningful. Having said that, and I'll email you after this, just a very short meditation called Transforming Unskillful Events. And that's where you can just bring to mind that emotional state, that experience. It's a 10-minute, I have a 10-minute and a 17-minute version where you bring it to mind and you kind of notice what's going on. And then you ask yourself in this situation, you learn about it, what would be a healthier way to respond? And it can be a very empowering way to start working with how afflictive emotions show up. And I'll email it to you. I got your email. I got your number. I know where you live. Okay.
Thank you. I
You're
want that
welcome.
email.
Okay, you got it coming. All right, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Great teaching. I mean, I always say like real change is real hard. And so, a lot of these ideas of, transforming unskillful events or, struggling with big emotions, it's way easier said than done, but it's something, it's a goal to shoot for. And like, jealousy, I like that, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all, right? It's like, sounds really cliche, but it's true. And I really like the quote that you said, two quotes. One, last week you said, the car pulls up, am I going to get in the car and go on that ride? And so if I can catch that, it's kind of Viktor Frankl, that quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space gives us power. And I think that's what I find a lot of in these teachings, the benefit is like noticing when something's coming up and then deciding, do I have some choice? And then the last piece that has been resonating with me that I've been really meditating on the last couple of days is that the opportunity to have first world problems. I love that. Like I'm bored. Well, wow, what a problem. I'm not in Ukraine or the Gaza Strip or in Iran. So it's like there's an element of like, wow, I have the opportunity to be miserable, to be a little bit farther up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And with that, then comes some humor. It's like, wow, I'm bitching about, deciding what I have to eat in the refrigerator. Nothing's really speaking to me, but like I have choice. So anyway, it helps me not take myself so seriously. So anyway, those are just some kind of thoughts that I have. And it's Wednesday night. We could be doing a lot of other things, but wow, I have the opportunity to be here, and I have electricity, and it's like, it's sometimes really silly what I find myself complaining about. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you for all that good wisdom. Just for those who may not be aware of the analogy, the quote of not getting in the car is when each thoughts or impulse, come up, you don't need to get in the car and go for the ride. Uh, yeah. I'm sorry that I have this maniac 16-year-old kid who wants to, tell me what we ought to do, and he's all about getting in the car, and and most of his ideas would get me in prison, but he's like trying to tell you to be worth it, and I'm so glad that 16-year-old is not running my life anymore. You literally over many years, gotta have a choice, gotta have some free will, and feel good about who you are. It's quite wonderful. Yeah. So, rich discussion. I appreciate what all of you bring. And as we leave, the view, meditation, and conduct. In other words, what a wonderful view that we have first world problems. That what do we have to cultivate in our lives? incredible opportunities we have. We can walk and talk and see and move our fingers. And to know that sensations fundamentally boil down to pleasant and unpleasant. And everything on top of that is an elaborative process. And you get to have a choice about that elaboration. If you develop the capacity to make that choice to be mindful. And that's where the training. So also, I don't know if all of you know, but if we have a 28-day meditation training course, you can join anytime. You look that up and sit with me for 4 weeks, see if you survive. But what a difference to have a mind where we can be present, have that choice, and have a practice that gives us an opportunity of free will. And then, the conduct that you'll feel good about. But as Chris points out, use the word hard. I want to say it's effortful. Sometimes effort's worth, other times it's hard, sometimes pleasant, but it's effortful. And it takes consistency, and it is difficult, right? It takes time. And everybody's looking for a shortcut, want that fix. But when I was at one of the deepest points of sort of fear and depression in my life, and things had fallen apart, and a very clear realization came to me. It was standing from my little place, 551 Niagara in Burbank, California. All I needed to do was take care of today. And what occurred to me is if I take care of today in a healthy way, and then I do that tomorrow, and I keep doing that, those days add up. So rather than worrying about my future will be good if I just keep taking care of today, because those days add up. And it just unlocked everything for me that day. The only reality is the moment we're in this moment. Everything else is just a whole bunch of field of potential and my own fears, insecurity, and self-grasping. I just knew that I was, becoming a single parent once again, just, doing it, just do this. And then those days add up. And here we are many years later. So the best way to improve the future is to improve today. Worrying about it doesn't help much. All right, so with that, let's take a little time to dedicate the merit and wisdom, the time that we have spent together. A lot of things we could have been doing on Wednesday nights. We got to come hang out with Chris and have an opportunity to explore causes and conditions for happiness and well-being. Greater opportunity to understand ourselves, the world we live in. To explore the potentials of free will in our own lives. Path of liberation from a myriad of emotional and mental afflictions. What a wonderful opportunity that is. We get to bring it into the world. So let us dedicate any and all merit from this time together for the benefit of all beings. May our efforts find their way into the world, reducing suffering and planting the seeds of liberation. And let us also dedicate this merit and wisdom for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately recognize our own ultimate primordial wisdom and Buddha nature, that we may be of greatest benefit to all. With that context, those who would care to can join in dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re so